Okay, time for our big boss battle recap from last night's Starfinder adventure. They finally were at the big bad boss, Synerthak, a large black augmented dragon, who's the CEO of DekCorp, a rogue corporate weapons manufacturer, essentially. They were tracking down a crystal they've been developing, was basically supergate technology, which the party determined was too powerful to remain. So they're going after it. The party, few adventures back, freed a mystic that was under the control of Synerthak, who was helping in the development of this thing. Synerthak wants their technomancer to join him now and help him help him finish the development of this crystal. So Synerthak eventually sends a hit squad to kidnap one of their great allies. It succeeds, and he offers to trade that ally for the Technomancer. The party acquiesces, but of course doesn't mean to actually keep that. They fly up to the CEO's office and their giant corporate tower, and disintegrate the force field and the windows outside of his office. Jump in to his office where he is holding Trista, the captive, and eventually separate the captive, Trista, from him. The wizard puts a orb of force or resilient sphere around her, protecting her, and then the dragon rushes towards the party. Here, that we can see, we have our White Knight Technomancer, we've got our King for our Mystic, and we've got our Bishop for our Mechanic, and then off screen is our Operative, who's using a Rogue Mini because he's almost always a Rogue, no matter what we play. He is off screen though because he was not in the grouping when the dragon ran over to this other group and teleported them down into his lair from his office, using essentially the ring teleportation technology from Stargate, if you're familiar with that. So, the scene is set. They are in this lair here, but for the most part, they can't see any of this stuff. The whole lair is shrouded in a green fog mist. All of their armors are alerting them to high levels of radiation. You can see the green sludge trails here that sort of put off this mist, and right now it's very thick, limiting visibility to 15 feet. It will disperse over time. Each round it reduces by 10 feet. But then as a lair action, the lair can emit additional gas to reset it down to 15. The lair actions also are to expand the sludge here. So right now the sludge is severe radiation within 10 feet of it, of any of the barriers here. So if any of the characters get within 10 feet, they have to deal with severe radiation and make their save for that. But one of the lair actions is it can expand outward by 10 feet. So anyone within 20 feet of the line will have to make a fortitude save as well and deal with severe radiation too. So that'll come up a couple of times. The other thing that the lair action, the third and final one, is that it can produce 3 undead dragonkin from the sludge. Dragonkin are CR12. They're not meant to be a threat. They're just meant to kind of be a hindrance and aid Synerthak should any save or suck spell actually manage to take hold. That way, flesh to stone doesn't enter a fight early. I hate when that happens. I love how 5e deals with, legendary saves to deal with that. So I have some similar things to that here as well. So we start where the players can only see 15 feet, which means they can all see Synerthak, basically, as he morphs out of human form, which he was in, and he morphs into his dragon form. And then he disappears into the mist behind him, giving himself cover. Now remember, dragons have blind sense, so he can see them within 60 feet, but they can't see him if he's more than 15 feet away currently. So he vanishes. Now, the first thing that I messed up on, because I wasn't going back to my notes that I prepped for this campaign, or this battle, is when, players are all clumped up like this and they're fighting a dragon, what does the dragon do? Of course, he breathes on them. Well, what I foolishly did was I had him greater invisible himself, even though he's retreating back into obfuscation. So that was just a mistake on my part. I got really excited with my narration and forgot about the plan. But not a huge deal, but do lose a fair amount of damage output there. His breath weapon is a 20d10, breath weapon, and so, average damage of about 100. dealt to 3 players there, none of which who have evasion. So the DC is only a 23 reflex, so it's not impossible to make. It's not even all that difficult to make, but the damage is high if they do fail. The reason that I'm doing this, just so you know, the dragon's been modified substantially because this mystic is his only job is curing and healing. That's all he does. He can do it basically all day long, and he can do it for absurd amounts of damage. So I'm not at all afraid of doing massive damage to the party, and I'm not afraid of even dropping the party to 0 as long as the mystic is up, because he can just fix it. Even death he can fix. So not a big deal. I'm not worried about that. So know your party. 1, 2. Make sure you follow your script unless, there's a reason to change. So in this case, I kind of just lost a turn, which is kind of okay because the dragon took a turn to teleport them out here, so it kind of evens out. Anyway, the dragon disappears off into obfuscation. The players scatter out a little bit using, their fly abilities, just to try to see. Actually, the Technomancer goes over here, and the mechanic comes out here. Now, the dragon currently is basically in this section here, so the mechanic is real close to being able to see him. The mechanic has a cool trick, though, that if he can see invisible creatures, right, and if he can see it, he can spend a move action to project a holographic image onto it that follows the creature wherever it goes, allowing his entire party to see. So that's going to be a problem as soon as he can do that. But he has to first be able to see the dragon again, and on his turn to be able to spend a move action to do that. So the fog is going to mess with that, because even though the hologram is there, they can't see it if they're not within 15 feet. So that's going to be a problem. So this happens, and unbeknownst to the players, one of the lair actions goes off and emits Dragonkin out of the 3 sections of the sludge here. So they're there. They're not really doing anything, but they're there, and they're going to cause some trouble here later on. Now the operative goes, quickly figures out how to activate the teleportation from the dragon's office into the lair. Way passes his computer check with like a 54 or something absurd. Teleports down. So he now gets to join the party. The Mystic is just trying to stay centered amongst everyone to keep within healing range. He's got like 100 feet of healing range or something stupid, so it's not a big deal. But he does want to make sure that he can heal everyone when he needs to, as that's his entire role here in the fight. So he does that. Dragon, then, now that the rogue is here, he nails it with step 2 of his plan, which is dominate person. So I described the scene as this purple line fires out of this area here, hits the operative. He fails his will save. And so Synerthak tells him to kill the bug, which of course is the Mystic. He is a Shurin. So the dragon knows that the Mystic's going to be a problem, wants him dead, and it's going to let the operative deal with that. Now, the Mystic has also cast a major form of telepathy on the entire party, so their thoughts kind of instantaneously transfer amongst themselves. So they quickly figure out that the rogue's mind is not in the right place, and know they need to deal with it. So the Technomancer here flies back over to the rogue and fixes his mind using, I'm not sure what the hack was called, but it's a rebooting hack where he gets to grant the rogue an additional will save. So he does, and this is literally right before the rogue's turn, before he's going to hit Ick here, our Mystic. So, fixes that. So that problem is done. Good for them. The fog has retreated another 10 feet, so visibility is now 25 feet. And unbeknownst to the players again, the stuff bubbles up. And the mechanic here is flying, so isn't affected. It hasn't happened yet. But he does see the bubbling over, and so he knows that, he can do that, but doesn't really know what that means yet. So that's good. So then they all kind of know the general area of the dragon. So finally, the mechanic gets to move up a lot until he sees the dragon. He sees the dragon. He puts up the holographic image. Now, these guys still can't see the dragon, but they will be able to once the fog dissipates. So our dragon is roughly here, and these are all kind of rough. I don't, of course, remember exactly where everything was, but he's roughly here. And so now I had a choice. One of the things that he wants to do, because he wants to kidnap the Technomancer, is he wants to flesh to stone the Technomancer. Because he needs to get him out of the way, because his spells are going to become a problem here at some point. But he also doesn't want to kill him. He has ways of bringing him back from the dead, but he doesn't want to use that. He would rather just flesh to stone him, kill off his party, and then unflesh to stone him later, when he can more easily control the Technomancer. So that's his plan. But he's also got a nice grouping here that he can take advantage of, where he couldn't really before. So he's going to now, because he's not really worried about the damage dealt to the Technomancer outright killing him. Breeze a whole bunch of acid on the party. Everyone except the operative and the mechanic. These two here take a bunch of damage. So the Mystic and the Technomancer take a fair amount of damage, which the Mystic rapidly heals, pretty quickly. And the Dragon, again, moves out of view. The fog recedes again, increasing visibility to 35 feet. It's dark in here, except for the kind of low green glow from the radioactive sludge. So, but everyone's got dark vision, so if the mist goes away, then they can see him. It's not going to be a big deal. And, the mechanic's got his hologram on him. So again, not a big deal there. The Dragon Kin at this point have moved up. They are trying to do some things, but like I said, they're CR12. They're not even capable of hitting armor class against these guys without a 20. So they're mostly not doing anything. They're just kind of getting in the way. They're taking some damage when, the party can't see the dragon. They shoot the Dragon Kin, things like that. So mostly you can ignore them for now. They'll come up a little bit later on. Now, the wizard gets clever. Oh, I'm sorry. The lair action occurs and fills the room up again with mist, reducing visibility to 15 feet. The wizard, Technomancer, figures out this is a problem and it can just keep happening, so he wants to find a way to solve it. So a level 20 Technomancer in Starfinder can fuse 2 6th-level spells together to cast Wish. So he does that. And he wishes for a wind to come up and clear the room of fog. Now this is an enclosed cavern, so that's kind of problematic for me as a DM. But it's Wish, and he's, blowing 2 of his highest level spell slots, so I'm definitely going to let it happen. But he also wasn't very careful in his wording, so I'm not going to just let it work the way they want. So what ends up happening is he ends up summoning hurricane force winds into this cavern that blows from this side over and pushes all of the gas up against this far wall. But it's hurricane force winds, and the mechanic and the Technomancer, the dragon, and all the Dragon Kin are all flying. A lot of them fail their saves, and I rolled 2d6 times. The rules are 2d6 times 10 for the distance moved based on these winds. And I rolled, I think, 90. So Dragon, I think, passed. We only went 45. That lands him like smack dab into this corner of the sludge. Everyone else gets pushed down onto this layer here. And actually, the mechanic fails his save, and because he's flying, he moved basically the entire 90 feet, to essentially be right there with the dragon. So he's right there. We had some fun debate about fluid dynamics and the way wind works in a closed cavern like this, but I didn't want to bog the game down with it too much, so I just said, this is what it is. Had some grumbling from some players, but I just said, deal with it. I don't have good rules for wind, and I'm not going to stop our game to deal with it. So all the gas is pushed up against this wall here, so it's not really a problem. They can see everything. They see the cavern. They can now see these additional platforms they can use as either cover or to get up on away from the sludge. But you'll note that they are within the sludge's distance now for when it goes up. Now the dragon's pissed and is totally visible and pretty exposed. And the party here can deal a fair amount of damage between the operative and the mechanic, so he knows he doesn't want to just give them that chance. So now he needs to deal with the Technomancer because the spells have become a problem. So now he fleshes to stone the Technomancer, which works, not a problem. He fails his save, turns to stone. No big deal, because the Mystic can just come up on the next round and fix it with his own flesh to stone spell. So does that. So now we have flesh to stone and unflesh to stone, the Technomancer. But we did get rid of the Technomancer's turn and the Mystic's turn, so it wasn't a huge waste. Now on the dragon's next turn, the mechanic flies up and tries to shoot the dragon. Actually scores a critical hit and deals like a bunch of damage. I think it was like 170 damage or something on a critical. So he's looking pretty hurt, and he has been fast healing. He took some damage before they actually left the office, And the Technomancer here gets a good look at that damage has healed, so they know he has fast healing. Now the dragon wades directly into this radioactive sludge. And I describe the scene as his legs that are in the sludge essentially start to suck up the radioactive sludge, and his legs and his whole body starts to just bulge, like it's just filling with this sludge. So instead of being kind of a toned, muscular dragon, he's a bulbous behemoth now. Which is, I just thought was an interesting description. Mechanically, what's happening here is as long as he's in the sludge, he can breathe every round. He doesn't need to roll I think normally it's a D4. I had him rolling a D6 for his breath weapon. So he just recharges every round because he's in his own radioactive sludge. And when he breathes, it's max damage. So it's 200 damage unless they reflex for half, and it's 100 damage. Now again, don't do this to your party unless you're sure that they have a way of dealing with massive damage. And this party does. First of all, their operative is always going to make his reflex save. It's a low reflex save, and he's got evasion, so he's just basically never going to take damage. The Mystic can fix anyone who does take damage or even dies, so I'm not worried about it, but I do want that tension of saying, okay, you take 200 damage, because that's a scary thing to even a party who's got a healer, right? They get nervous about that, and it's exactly what happened, so I was really happy with that. The Mystic and the Technomancer both failed their saves. They're hit with 200 damage. Mystic, after this turn, will basically fix all of that. For the most part. But the Technomancer is super nervous because he only got about 250 hit points in total. Mechanic, of course, is like, good God! That's ridiculous. But he also notes that while the dragon is standing in the sludge, he doesn't heal. So his fast healing is gone while he's in the sludge. That's the trade-off I made, is the dragon can stand in the sludge, get his breath weapon, and do massive damage. But he can't heal while he's doing that. The radiation reduces his healing. Okay, so we have that. Oh, and at some point, I don't remember exactly where, but before this, the dragon also has an automatic X-Paragon gun, which is basically a giant machine gun, a shoulder-mounted machine gun. So he used that at one point. It didn't really do much. I think it hit the Technomancer for some, but everyone else basically dodged out of the way. So, actually, it was shortly after the Mystic used augmented worm gland from himself to do, I think, 15 damage to the dragon. So the dragon's like, that was a cute cone, here, try this. And so he pulls out the machine gun and blasts him. It wasn't much, but it was kind of a cool effect. Using the automatic weapon property in Starfinder. So that was fun. So now the mechanic is flying up and around, again, trying to shoot the dragon. It's not going great, but he is, hitting on occasion. But the dragon's tough, so it's not going great. And eventually the dragon will move out of the sludge over here to get some cover from the team here. The operative then is going to run over here where he has sight. Excuse me, and he's going to shoot the dragon. This operative is built for trick attack, which basically means that on a hit, if he succeeds on his trick attack, he gets to apply a condition. And at this point, he can apply 2 conditions because he's level 20 operative. Now, usually what he does is he hits it with bleed. Now, bleed does 20 damage at the start of every of a turn, whereas fast healing heals a certain amount of damage at the start of every turn, and bleed stops as soon as you take any healing. So I ruled that the healing happens first, so he doesn't take the bleed and then heal. He heals, and so the bleed doesn't ever actually take effect. The party didn't really get a chance to see that, though, because there was never a time where they were looking at him when he should have taken bleed damage, but they were aware of the fast healing, so they probably pieced it together, but no one announced it. They might not have, and that's okay. It's not a huge deal. Anyway, the operative over here, he just passes his trick attack, because even if he rolls a 1, which is not an auto-fail, he just gets a trick attack based on... He's built for it, so he adds like 50 to his attempt, and he needs to pass a 40, so not a big deal. So he succeeds on the trick attack, but he still has to hit the target. So he rolls, and he hits. So he applies the bleeding condition, and he applies what's called a knockout shot, which means I have to make a fortitude save, or be knocked unconscious for a minute. Now, for a big bad evil guy, the big bad of the campaign, the final boss, to go unconscious for a full minute is hugely problematic and would be super anticlimactic. But at the same time, I don't want to rob the rogue of a cool moment and using an ability. I want to give him that, but I can't just end the campaign like this. It doesn't work. And so this is what I talked about earlier, where I had some things prepped for if there were save or suck problems, and this is a save or suck. I rolled really low. I think I rolled like a 4 or something. Didn't pass the fortitude save. Dragon falls unconscious. Rogue is, of course, super excited, but wary, moves back over here. The mechanic sees, then, the scene I describe, where out of where the shoulder-mounted cannon is on the dragon, a bunch of nanites come out. And from the shoulder, they go into the mouth, they go down the throat, and then the dragon wakes up, hacking up a whole bunch of nanites. This is on his turn. The players, I think, are still healing from various things. And there's Dragonkin around. They're just, again, not really doing much. So, the mechanic watches the dragon get woken back up, essentially, from these nanites. There's no game mechanic for that. I just knew that he had 2 containers of nanites that could fix some of these problems. I also gave him 2 gems of Dispel Magic that were basically embedded in him that would go off if he failed, like a Flesh to Stone or something. That's my choice as a DM because I don't want the Saber Suck to ruin an epic battle, but I do want it to matter. I want those things to have an effect that the players aren't just blowing a 5th or a 6th level spell to get nothing. So in this case, what happens is the nanites recover him. The dragon loses his standard action, so he can't shoot at the mechanic there. He can't look around the corner and blast the people with a breath weapon. All he can do is move. But he's got a burrow speed, and he's looking pretty hurt now. So now is the time for a tactical retreat. So the dragon's going to burrow underneath this mesa here. And per burrowing rules, doesn't like to leave a trace. And he's going to let his fast healing just kind of kick up a little bit. And heal up a bit before he pops back out to wreck some folks. So now what we have is we have 1 or 2 rounds where eventually the mechanic lands on this mesa and is just starting to take pot shots at these Dragonkin, who have kind of surrounded the Technomancer. What they're trying to do is they're trying to grapple the Technomancer and get him away from the party so that they can kind of be sort of safekeeping. They're undead, they're not all that intelligent, they're relatively intelligent, but they just know that the Technomancer is the primary objective, so they're trying. What this has done is every round they're doing this, the Technomancer has to use a resolve point to teleport 30 feet away or something. And they just follow him because they've got a fly speed of 30 feet. Again, they're undead Dragonkin with wings. So they keep going back and forth and back and forth. The Operative has a melee weapon, so he gets tax opportunity, but they're not bad. The Mystic does not, so he doesn't. So they're okay just running back and forth and back and forth. And eventually we also add a couple more Dragonkin to this scene just to, because no other lair actions were doing anything. And I actually forgot about this. At some point, the Technomancer recast Wish. The winds eventually died down, because he didn't specify how long he wanted the cavern cleared for when he used Wish. So, the winds die down, and the fog starts to, refill the room, and actually the lair action goes off, refilling the room with fog anyway. So that happens. The Technomancer now wants to he knows now to think about his wish a little bit more carefully, and he wants to re-wish. So what he does is he wishes for the gas in this room to always be transparent. And I thought that was a really well-worded wish. He's now used 4 6-level spells to do this, and I don't really want to taint this wish too bad. And I'm not really coming up, even if I wanted to, I wasn't coming up with a good way to do that. The gas in this room is always transparent. Okay. So what he's done is he's spent, 4 6-level spells to reduce and eliminate a lair action. And I think that's fine. So I let it work. Boom. Everything's transparent. So now the gas is not going to be an issue anymore. So that's one of the reasons that the Dragonkin keep coming out. And also the Technomancer at one point was too close to the sludge. Actually, everyone's a little too close to the sludge here. Took a bunch of con damage, though Mystic saved him. So now they all know to stay well outside of 20 feet from the sludge lines. So they're doing a great job there. So now I've basically been eliminated 2 of my 3 lair actions because they know to stay away from the sludge, and they fix the gas. So the only thing I can do now is pop up more Dragonkin. The Dragonkin just aren't doing anything. They have a plus 15 to hit. And most of the characters, I think the minimum KC is a 34, 35. So really just never going to hit unless they get a 20, which happens a couple of times. The Mystic takes some damage. But again, without massive damage, they're not carrying. The Mystic is just fixing it. The Dragon spends a couple rounds healing, and then he pops up using his burrow speed at the top of this mesa. He pops up and bites this mechanic, dealing a fair amount of damage, right? His bite's not bad, but it's also not great. So, I'm sorry, actually, no, he didn't bite here. He did breath weapon, hit these two, just a regular breath weapon. He hit these two. Operative, of course, saved. And Technomancer saved as well. So did a fair amount of damage here, but again, Miss is just going to fix it. The mechanic now doesn't want to be right next to the dragon, which is wise, and so he flies away, getting an attack opportunity. And that does hit with a bite, dealing a fair amount of damage, but not a ton. So, but it was nice to finally have a melee attack hit. It happened once before where he provoked an attack of opportunity, and the attack missed, so whatever. The only thing that's a real threat on the melee side of things is the multi-attack, because this dragon has a bite, 2 claws, and a tail slap. And if all of those hit, and all of them do damage, it is a lot of damage. It will probably knock even their toughest character all the way down to 0, which is going to be a problem. But of course, my party's smart. They know don't stand next to the dragon, and none of them are melee characters primarily, so they're just not going to do that. So now the dragon's fully exposed, without, good use of his lair actions, and the dragon counter not being effective. So again, he burrows down, heals up a little bit, the party heals up a little bit, and now we're just playing a resource game, which can kind of be a little bit of a drag. So I'm hoping to kind of speed it along a little bit. The party, at some point, kind of clumps up in this kind of general vicinity, with Dragonkin swarming. Actually, the Technomancer's in that corner. Right, and again, these guys are just trying to get the Technomancer to be grappled, or now eventually start wanting to just take him down, so that they can knock him unconscious, get him out of here, and then, he can be used for nefarious purposes. So there's that, and then the dragon, again, burrows, spends a couple turns healing, and then he pops back up here. Again, in his own radioactive sludge, he absorbs the sludge, breathes onto the party, dealing max damage again. Failed saves a round except for the operative, who takes none because of evasion. So they're looking pretty hurt. So then what happens is the Mystic, or the Technomancer, teleports over here, staying away from the sludge. Again, he's been doing this a lot, so he's running out of resolve points to do this, but that's okay. The Mystic then busts his butt to move all the way over, I think here is where he moves. Now his intent here was to get out of the way of any future breath weapons. But he didn't announce that, that's just where he went. And so I had the dragon use his speed to come up here so that he could get everyone into his 80-foot cone. Now at this point, the Mystic is upset. He goes, I thought I was outside of breath weapon range, because what his healing is doing is it's actually taking away from his hit point pool to give it to the Technomancer. So he's saying that if he wasn't, because he was thinking that this bend in the cavern here would protect him from a breath weapon. And from where the dragon was, that's true, that's why I had him move. But he's certainly not out of breath weapon range if the dragon were to move. But again, this is turning into a bit of a slog, and so I don't fight the thing too much. I kind of wish I had. I did let him retroactively, change some of the hit points that he gave to the Technomancer. So he kept 100 for himself and took 100 back from Technomancer. They're still real hurt, but better than they were. So he comes out here, he breathes a bunch of, his max breath weapon again on the party, and does a bunch of damage. The Technomancer is up by about 4 hit points or something crazy, so it's getting tight. Then the dragon burrows at the end of his turn here to get away and to again let his healing down, because he took some damage while he was standing in that pool before he moved. He's down to just about 70 or so. He's looking rough. So he burrows down. Here's where the cool part comes in. Cool, but very unexpected. The Technomancer has an ability called Phase Shot, which basically lets him shoot at a target known to him within range, as long as he knows about it. Ignoring cover, go through walls, go through ground, go through force fields, anything. It basically phases through everything until it hits the target. He's used it a couple of times before. It has never actually hit because he's not designed to shoot things, so he's not good at it. He's not good against the armor class, and he's rolling poorly. So I'm not terribly concerned about it, but I should have been. Dragon burrows down. Mystic heals everyone. Technomancer phase shots. And hits with like a natural 18 or something. Whew, okay. But I'm thinking, he's got 70 hit points. There's no way the Technomancer's doing, 70-some hit points worth of damage. Technomancer does 77 hit points worth of damage. And that's it. The dragon, who is currently underground, burrowed, 30 feet away, dies. Underground. And that was the end of our battle. It was really good. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. It definitely started to feel like a slog towards the end, because we were playing this, hit and run resource game where dragon pops up, hits a bunch of people for as long as he can with his health pool, and then retreats to heal. The dragonkin aren't doing anything, which is too bad. I should have made them a little bit tougher, at least up their attack, so they were a little bit more of a threat. But mostly the party just ignored them. The rogue did knock some of them down a couple of times with a stunning shot or something, no big deal. So I was kind of glad actually that the wizard had a way to deal with the burrowing problem, because otherwise this could have gone on for a really long time, and it might have even gone into 2 sessions, and most problematically it probably would have been a little bit boring for the players and for myself, right? That gets old. So it happened in a way that I didn't expect it to, but I'm actually glad it did, because it did end with the players victorious. They got really low a couple of times. They took some con damage from the severe radiation that had to be fixed. The dragon got to use several of his really cool spells to the detriment of the party. Wasn't perfect, but that's fine. A couple of key takeaways, and I've mentioned some of these already, but I'll end on these key takeaways, is this. Know your party when you're developing encounters. If my party hadn't had a full healing mystic that was dedicated to healing, I would not have made this encounter this tough. I would not have given the dragon a 20d10 attack. I would not have given additional minions, as many minions here. I wouldn't have made the radiation nearly as bad. But because they had this mystic that I knew could solve all these problems, I wasn't worried about it, including the flesh to stone. I did expect the mystic to deal with the dominate person, but it was the wizard who did, which is fine. So again, know your party when you're doing these things. Be careful when you're doing things like flesh to stone or dominate person. They're cool, but when you use them against your players, what you're doing is taking a player's turn away. If they're stunned or unconscious or flesh to stoned or whatever, you can take multiple turns away. And that's effective in combat, but it's also really boring for the player. So just use that real sparingly. Again, I was happy to take away 1 turn from people because it was a 4-on-1 encounter, ignoring the dragonkin that are useless. I'm happy to take 1 turn away here and there. I'm not too concerned about it. And actually, I didn't really take the turn away from the rogue. He got his turn. The Technomancer lost his to fix him. So you have some dynamics there that you just want to be careful of, be cognizant of, and just know your party, know what they're capable of. Be careful to use your monster's abilities in the encounter to the fullest. I think it would have been a little bit more stressful if right off the bat, after he had moved into the fog, he had breath weaponed, or if he had breath weaponed right before he moved back into the fog. Greater invisibility was kind of a waste of a turn. But again, he had used his turn at our last session to teleport them down here. So the argument could easily be made that he didn't actually have an action left to use. So I'm okay with that. When you're dealing with things like greater invisibility, it's good to, again, give an advantage for a turn or 2. You want to make sure your party has a way of dealing with that. I knew they did. The mechanic can see invisibility, and so can the mystic, and the mystic can just grant the others the ability. So I knew it was going to be somewhat of an advantage, but the real problem is going to be the obfuscation of the lair. Lair actions are not a part of Starfinder, but I love them. I think they're great at evening odds when you really want one really tough bad guy fight. And so I used it here, and it went really, really, really well. It added some additional stuff. So add additional stuff to your encounters. Don't just have it be a damage-dealing slogfest or a resource slogfest. If you feel it becoming a slogfest, then try to do something to change that. In this case, right, the dragon easily could have gone and hid more than he did. But even if he hadn't taken that shot, he's not hiding for rounds and rounds and rounds, right? He's hiding for 2 or 3 rounds to get 70 to 100 hit points back, popping back up, and devastating the party with a breath weapon. But eventually, as with people in the real world, you get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. I, as a DM, feel that way, and the dragon's going to feel that way too, which makes, because he's a prideful, egotistical creature who believes himself to be unbelievably powerful, he's going to be reckless and make mistakes. Don't be afraid to let that happen, particularly if the battle's starting to be a slogfest. Now, if the battle is turning into where your party is really running down to the wire, don't be afraid then to kind of press that a little bit and have your party be a little bit more reckless. Again, that's up to your party dynamic, know your party for that sort of a thing. But when you're coming to an epic boss battle like this, I was not afraid to kill the party. I was not afraid to kill the Mystic, and actually was hoping to get there, but things just didn't work out that way. Killing the Mystic would have really put a sense of tension that they hadn't yet felt, because now their healer's gone and they're still a dragon to fight. So would have been really interesting. Was a really interesting fight, and just a couple of key takeaways there. So I hope it helped you guys. I hope this helps you with your encounters. Just remember, know your party. Use your monsters, NPCs, whatever's abilities to their fullest. Strategize a little bit ahead of time. Stick to the strategy as best you can, but as the situation changes, change your strategy. Do additional things that aren't just damage. It's not just I hit, you hit, I hit, you hit. Gets really boring. Throw in some lair actions. They're really cool. They're super easy to add in. They just go on initiative count 20, right? So you just put it in there wherever that falls in the initiative order, and they just go. Pick 1 or 2 or 3. And when you have a big bad fight like this, have a way of avoiding the saber suck, because that's just a boring game. It's a boring encounter. It's really anticlimactic. So find a way to do that. This is the big boss of a campaign. In this case, this is a dragon CEO of a massive corporation. He's definitely got some tricks up his sleeve, so I wasn't worried about augmenting him and giving him some really cool things. When you do that, though, you still want the player's action to have mattered, which is why the knockout shot, it took away his standard action. And then if they had done anything else, that also would have taken away standard action if you needed to use the Dispel Gem or something, right? Give the party a reward, give the player a reward for doing something like that and having it work, but don't let it end your game, or your encounter at least, because that's super boring for everyone, your players included. Okay? Hope it helps. This is Matt from the RPG Foundry, boss battle recap for the final Starfinder game for my party. We're moving back to Pathfinder for a really exciting campaign here, and I'll be doing recap videos for that as well. So as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate your support. Message me, comment here. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, all at the RPG Foundry. Pretty easy to find, kind of all over the place. But seriously, I'd love to talk. If you have any questions about DMing, encounter building, whatever, hit me up. I'm super happy to talk to you guys about your encounters, what's going on, and basically just be another mind to bounce some stuff off of, okay? Well, it's Labor Day weekend for me, so have a happy Labor Day if you're enjoying it, and every Labor Day from here on out I hope is fun for you guys, and I will see you next time. Guys, here's to fun, here's to friends, and here's to role-playing. See you next time.